We're here today in the beautiful city of Wilmington, North Carolina. Picked out a really good spot for you and some upcoming spots that I think you're really going to like. The theme of this is going to be war, and we're going to, each area that we're going to find for you, we're going to pick each section that we're going to kind of just keep turning back the time until we really get to about 170 full years of American history. Hi, we're on board the USS North Carolina, one of actually only 8 museum battleships on Earth. I've personally been to 2 other ones, the USS Texas and the USS Alabama. So this one, and each one is unique. Each one has its own story and really its own history, and this one is no different from that. And with this one, this particular one, the reason why it is we're on deck, why it is in existence right now, is because this was given to a gift to the people of North Carolina as remembrance for all the servicemen that died during World War II. So despite its short 6-year history of being an active battleship for the U.S. Navy, it's got a lot of good stories, chock full of World War II information. So for really any history buff or just anyone that just likes really just exploring something this adventurous and epic, I definitely recommend coming down to Wilmington and checking out this landmark. So let's explore it a little more. This is one of a very rare naval airplane, the Kingfisher. Not a lot of them are in existence, and one of them are on display here. So pretty rare treat to see something like this. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be inside a gun turret, which is the biggest part of a battleship in which people think of, you can look no further than going inside of one. You really get the ins and outs of really seeing what really makes a gun turret work. Very complex machinery just in one turret, and this ship, if I'm not mistaken, had 3 large ones. Most battleships had numerous ones, but each one was almost its own really independent, just functioning machine versus, say, the rest of the ship, which the ship by itself was really just a very complex beast. But what we can see in here, if you look into the there's windows here, which are closed off, unfortunately, you can actually see where the guns themselves, the turrets, and then where the actual shells were loaded into. So again, very complex, a lot of steps in here, not a lot of room for error. So, and this is before the dawn of computers, but computers, we know it as a PC, but kind of the original MacBook, you could say, was one of these. This is a U.S. naval computer, which is responsible for computation, so you can actually see how they would set and get the guns precisely. But you can imagine doing this during wartime? I know I couldn't. So, and again, this is before really the advent of modern technology as we know it. So really the last of a dying breed of sorts. So this is what makes this battleship so special, and which makes this area one of my favorite places of the battleship really neat, because you get to see a lot of the technology of the day really mesh together. Just playing around with interior of a 5-inch 38 caliber dual gun mounts. These are the anti-aircraft guns you typically see on the sides of the battleships, the larger ones, not the small machine gun 20 millimeter. But these guys right here could really pack a wallop. In case of emergency, they could always do these manually, but really more so than that. Could you just imagine the cramped quarters, which is really I'm in right now? I mean, even any civilian, but let alone this is really what these men had to endure day in, day out in the hot, the heat, typhoons. They're in the Pacific. Just a lot of things that would really make any man go mad or really homesick. So I know I can't stay in here for very long. It's very cramped. And I barely fit through myself. We're on the signal bridge, which is the area of the ship where the communications, visual communications, so again, kind of their early form of email here. This is to hold the semaphore flags. These are the ones you always used to see if you ever think of the old movies, the guys waving the flags. And actually one of these guys could write up to, I believe it was 20 words per minute. So when a ship's passing another ship, friendly ship obviously, they can pass messages back to each other. We're here on the bridge of the ship, where all the navigation primarily was made. You can actually look out the rear of the ship, though. Front. My bad. Can you, edit that out or anything? General Sherman was once quoted as saying, "War is hell, it's glory, all moonshine." But to me, it's not the glory, it's just the fun, at least if you're on a museum ship. All right, we just arrived down here at the lower decks tour, and this is one of the first rooms, which is the bakery room. Really shows you the scale and size. To me, I really like the lower decks because you can really see the meat and potatoes of what made a battleship work. It's not about the big guns or the captain, admiral, the flags. It's really about the thousands of enlisted men rather than the one or two officers you always heard about. And the thing is about a battleship, this is a really good example of one, is that this is a working city. It's not just a bunch of men eating like potatoes or anything like that or peeling them down here. This is an actual working, living environment. And one of these, this is actually a mixer, which was to be brought into the dough. So just really little things like this really brings home to you just how the scale and how massive they need to self-sustain themselves. So not just that, dentist officery, tailors, in this case, the bakery. So you really get to see a lot, I think, of the lower deck tour. So if you ever go to a museum ship, be sure to always check this out if you really want to see what everyday life is, to really get the gist of what it all seems to be. It's another interesting feature about the battleship. This is the chow line right here where the servicemen would come in, and this is one of the galleys themselves, part of the galley itself. This galley in the battleship made over 8 million meals for servicemen within the 6 years that it was operating as an active battleship. So you can just imagine just the flurry of activity coming in here with just the bread and then the meat and then the row of hot plates here. So it's just really neat to see the everyday life of a serviceman. So really kind of hits home like everyday usage of the battleship itself. So we'll check out some more stuff down through here. So this is one of the many sleeping compartments of the average enlisted man, or most of them are seamen first class. So just imagine this kind of environment, just sleeping in it, and then let alone if you're at war or even at just bad weather. And then not only you're sharing this space, you have no privacy. Just a quote a while ago I was reading, it says, privacy, you lost that when you joined the Navy. So we're going to see if we can find the head here, show you just how crowded that was. Whew. Again, just sharing this space, this many men. This area is the head where up to 200 men would be here at one time at any given shift, which, again, I couldn't even bear to imagine using this during that time. There's your toilets here. You've got your urinals right over here in this location. And they're very keen on saving water. The average person uses 60 to 80 gallons of water. And the average seaman that was below deck, an enlisted man, used about 25. So they're very, very big on saving water. So again, just imagine this, what the men went through for this, fighting for our country in a cramped quarters like this. I personally couldn't do it myself. Battleships often went out hundreds of miles at sea, so you really can't go back to a port, especially under enemy territory or way out to sea. So to do any repairs, you had to do it actually here, which was their own repair shop in the ship itself. So a really neat room. This is one of the machine shop / tool rooms around the corner there. There's the central tool issue room where you could actually check out hammers, things like that, small tools. But just really neat part of history here that shows this is a living city, and to repair itself, it has to be in itself. So just really interesting machinery here. Good bit of history. Well, there's a lot of no smoking signs underneath here for a good reason. We're actually underneath one of the 3 main turrets of the battleship, directly underneath it in the 3rd deck, which is where they store the ammunition. These are considered to be .45 caliber, and even during training exercises, they would store the dummies down here, which were the same weight. But just seeing that we were above the turret a while ago and now underneath, you really get an immense sense of size and scale of just what this battleship is capable of doing just in one turret. And remember, there's 2 more in this battleship itself. So we're going to go to the lower decks and just see what else we've got here. And remember, no smoking. Now we're here in an early computer, which computers were really invented. The first electronic one was the ENIAC in 1946 to develop trajectory for the military, for artillery trajectory. And this one's really no different. This is almost like a older cousin of it, I guess you could say. So really a lot of volts running through this, AC, DC current, but as well you've got the old transistor tubes, the fuses, so it's a lot of first, second generation kind of coming in for the early computers. And I mean early, this is right before the ENIAC came out. And you can see here, this is the battery plotting room, where they would really plot precisely the trajectory itself. But again, just running through this, you really get a sense of early computing history. Battery switchboards, just massive amounts. Just imagine working in this. You can't move over to the right or to the left. Specialized men here. You're not going to see really the guy that's swapping the deck down here. You're going to really see a guy that's really on his stuff and just usually onto one machine. So again, you're seeing a very early part of history of computing. So a lot of it started with the military, and a lot of it started in places like this, below deck of the USS North Carolina. Now, even though this looks like we're on the set of an old James Bond film, we're actually underneath the additional layer of turret that we just saw a while ago. And since we're at this lower level, you can really see the inner workings of where the base of the gun, the big gun, if you can say, is located, which this area right here tends to be the powder room. But again, what I like about battleships, why this is really historical, why it should be a preserved ship, is because this is a really good example, including the computer room and coming down here to see really how far technology has come since the 1940s, but to see really how far technology was in the 40s. This is a really cutting edge for early World War II, and even though the ship was only lasted for 6 years, some of the computers in there actually were used well into the early 1990s, with the Iowa-class battleships with their computing systems. So with this type of technology that was on board the ship, again, with it being cutting edge, this really is a tribute to how far really you can get before you get to computers, microchips and processors, things like that. So it's just a really just beautiful aesthetically and then just historically just amazing place that you can really see really just how far we've come and really still have farther to go. So let's check out a little bit further down. Now that we just did the tour of the floating city known as USS North Carolina, we're here at one of its original propellers that was replaced right before she was decommissioned in 1947. So right before we're going to go to Fort Fisher next, which also was a World War II training ground, it also was a very important fortress in the U.S. Civil War. So we're turning back the time here. But before we go there, I just want to mention this is right across from beautiful downtown Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where the Cape Fear River is located. And this was a very big prize of the Union trying to battle its way up during the Battle of Fort Fisher. But before we go into that, I just want to mention that when you're down here in downtown Wilmington, definitely check out a lot of the restaurants, nice areas. We went to one last night, really good oysters, and I recommend that. Check it out on our website. And for right now, let's turn back the clock to the U.S. Civil War at Fort Fisher. So imagine a whole row of Navy gunships in 1865, 58 of them in all, bombarding this island. That's exactly what happened.